The first time I locked eyes with Gwen Harper, she had that fake smile plastered on her face, the kind that screams, "I'm about to ruin your life, but you're supposed to thank me for it." Standing on my dock in her crisp pantsuit with a clipboard clutched to her chest, she looked hilariously out of place against the backdrop of my serene 12-acre lake. Little did she know she was trespassing on private property that had been in my family for generations, and she was about to pick a fight with the wrong small-town architect. "Mr. Jenkins, I'm Gwen Harper, president of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. I need to discuss some irregularities with your water feature," she said, emphasizing water feature, as if my lake was some tacky birdbath. "I'm Jason Jenkins, a 42-year-old architect who returned to my hometown after serving in the Army Corps of Engineers. When my grandfather passed away 5 years ago, he left me not just this beautiful piece of land with its pristine lake, but also something much more valuable that almost nobody in the county knew about." "Mrs. Harper," I replied, setting down my fishing rod, "this is private property. How did you get past my gate?" She waved her hand dismissively. "The community has concerns about your lake. As you know, we're experiencing a drought, and the HOA board has voted to utilize this water resource for the benefit of all residents." I couldn't help but laugh. "My lake isn't part of your HOA. My property predates your development by about 70 years. Her smile tightened. "Actually, according to county records, the watershed impacts our community, which gives us certain rights. We'll be installing pumping equipment next week to help maintain our community landscaping." As she handed me a stack of official-looking documents, I noticed the Whispering Pines HOA letterhead. The development had sprung up about a mile down the road a decade ago, overpriced cookie-cutter houses with matching mailboxes and strict rules about what color you could paint your door. "I'll have my lawyer review these," I said calmly, which seemed to irritate her even more. "Don't make this difficult, Mr. Jenkins. The board's decision is final." She glanced around my property with obvious disdain. "And while I'm here, your dock doesn't meet our aesthetic guidelines, and that boathouse needs to be repainted in an approved color." That's when I realized she genuinely believed my property fell under her jurisdiction. This wasn't just a water grab, this was a full-on annexation attempt. "Mrs. Harper, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My property isn't part of Whispering Pines. I don't answer to your HOA." Her eyes narrowed. "Perhaps you haven't heard, but the county commissioners recently approved our boundary expansion. Your property now falls within our jurisdiction." This was news to me, very suspicious news. I'd attended every county meeting for years, partly because I occasionally did architectural work for the county, but mostly because of what my grandfather had entrusted to me. "I'll look into that," I said, deliberately keeping my voice neutral. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." As she clicked her way back up my dock in those ridiculous heels, I had a sinking feeling that this wasn't going to be a simple misunderstanding. Gwen Harper had the look of someone used to getting her way, and she'd set her sights on my lake. What she didn't know was that the Jenkins family didn't just own this lake. We owned the water rights for the entire county, thanks to a contract signed in 1932 when my great-grandfather helped develop the regional water system. It was something my grandfather had maintained quietly for decades, never abusing the power, but making sure our family retained control to prevent exactly this type of water grab. I called my buddy Frank at the county records office. "Frank, has there been any recent vote about expanding the Whispering Pines HOA boundaries?" "Not that I know of, Jay, but let me check." I heard typing in the background. "Nothing recent. Last boundary adjustment was 3 years ago, nowhere near your property." "That's what I thought. Can you send me a copy of the current boundaries?" "Sure thing. Everything okay?" "Just dealing with an overzealous HOA president. One more thing, has anyone been asking about water rights recently?" Frank paused. "Actually, yes. Someone from Whispering Pines has been in a few times researching watershed regulations. And there was a developer looking into purchasing water rights for a new project." My grandfather's warnings echoed in my head. "People will always want to control water, Jason. It's more valuable than gold in the long run." After hanging up, I pulled out the old steel lockbox from my closet. Inside was the water rights contract, along with detailed maps of the county watersheds. As I reviewed the documents, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A recent-looking survey map had been inserted with pencil markings showing my property as part of the Whispering Pines development. Someone had been in my house. The next morning, I drove to the county assessor's office with all my documentation. My friend Marta, who'd worked there for 20 years, looked troubled when I showed her the forged boundary map. "Jason, this is concerning. Let me pull the official records." After some searching, she gasped. "There's a problem. The official map was updated last month showing your property within Whispering Pines boundaries, but there's no accompanying resolution from the commissioners. This shouldn't have happened. Who authorized the change?" Marta checked the digital signature. "Commissioner Dale Wilson." Wilson was new, elected last year on a pro-development platform. I'd had my concerns about him. "I need copies of everything," I said. "And please don't mention this to anyone yet." On my way home, I drove through Whispering Pines. The manicured lawns and identical houses always made me uncomfortable. Near the clubhouse, I noticed a construction trailer with a sign, "Future home of Whispering Pines Resort and Golf Course." That was new. I slowed down when I saw Gwen Harper standing outside the trailer with two men, Commissioner Wilson and someone I recognized as Victor Reeves, a developer known for controversial projects in neighboring counties. They were looking at large blueprint plans, and all three were smiling like they'd won the lottery. I snapped a quick photo with my phone before driving away. That evening, I received an official-looking letter from the Whispering Pines HOA. It stated that my property had been incorporated into their jurisdiction through a legal boundary adjustment, and demanded immediate compliance with all HOA regulations. Additionally, they were exercising emergency drought provisions to utilize my lake as a water source for the community. The letter concluded with a thinly veiled threat. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $500 and potential legal action. The HOA board has also noted multiple violations on your property that must be addressed within 30 days. Attached was a list of supposed violations from my non-compliant dock to the color of my boathouse. They even cited my pickup truck as an eyesore that needed to be kept in a garage. I called my lawyer, Eleanor Patel, who specialized in property disputes. "This stinks of fraud, Jason," she said after reviewing everything. "They can't just redraw boundaries without proper hearings and notifications. And their claim to your water is absurd. But we need to understand what they're really after." "I think I know," I replied, telling her about the resort plans I'd seen. "My lake is the perfect centerpiece for a golf resort. They want to turn my family home into the 18th hole. That makes sense. Let me do some digging into this developer, Reeves. In the meantime, document everything and don't sign anything they give you." The next day, I was marking trees near my property line when a small convoy of vehicles drove up my private road, a Whispering Pines security car, Gwen Harper's luxury SUV, and a truck from Quality Water Solutions. I met them at my gate, which was locked. Gwen stepped out, now flanked by a security guard and two men in work clothes. "Mr. Jenkins, we're here to begin the water management project we discussed. Please open your gate." "No." Her fake smile dropped. "This isn't optional. We have legal authority. You have nothing of the sort," I interrupted. "My property is not part of your HOA, regardless of whatever map you've fabricated. And you have zero rights to my water." Commissioner Wilson emerged from her SUV. "Mr. Jenkins, there seems to be some confusion. The county has authorized this project as part of our drought management plan." "Really? Where's the environmental impact study? Where's the public notice? Where's the commissioner vote? Because I attend every meeting, and this never came up." Wilson's face reddened. "Sometimes urgent matters are handled through administrative channels." "Illegal channels, you mean?" I held up my phone. "I've already contacted my attorney. Any attempt to access my property will be considered trespassing, and any attempt to divert my water will trigger an immediate injunction. Gwen stepped forward. You're being unreasonable. This is about the greater good of the community. Which community would that be, Mrs. Harper? The existing one, or the resort you're planning with Mr. Reeves here? Oh yes, I know all about that. The look of shock on their faces confirmed my suspicions. The man by the water truck shifted uncomfortably. This is your last chance to cooperate voluntarily, Gwen threatened. Otherwise, things will become very unpleasant for you. I stood my ground. I look forward to discussing all this in court, including how you altered county records and attempted to steal private property. They left with threats of legal action, but I could see the worry in Wilson's eyes. He knew they'd overstepped. That night I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., my security system alerted me to movement near the lake. On the camera feed, I saw 2 men in dark clothing near my boathouse, carrying what looked like survey equipment and water testing gear. I called the sheriff and grabbed my flashlight. By the time I reached the lake, the men were attempting to install something in the water. The sheriff's deputies arrived minutes later, catching them red-handed. The men worked for Quality Water Solutions, the same company from earlier that day. When questioned, they admitted they were installing water monitoring equipment at the direction of Commissioner Wilson, who had given them a county work order to access my property. The forged work order was all the evidence Sheriff Tanner needed to take things seriously. Jason, this isn't right. I've known your family my whole life. Let me talk to the district attorney. The next morning, Eleanor called with news. I've been researching your grandfather's water rights contract. Jason, it's even more powerful than you thought. The contract doesn't just give you rights to your lake. It gives your family approval rights over all major water usage changes in the county. It was designed to prevent exactly this type of exploitation. Can they challenge it? They can try, but it's ironclad. Your great-grandfather was very forward-thinking. He included language about conservation and protecting natural resources that courts today would strongly uphold. Armed with this information, I decided it was time to go on the offensive. I contacted local reporter Maria Sanchez, who had exposed corruption in the neighboring county last year. This is bigger than just your property, Maria said after I showed her everything. If what you're saying is true, they're planning to exploit water resources during a drought to build a resort that would strain our system even further. I have proof, I said, showing her the documents, photos, and security footage. And there's more. The water rights contract my family holds was designed to prevent this exact scenario. Maria's eyes widened as she reviewed the contract. Why hasn't your family ever used this authority before? My grandfather believed in being a steward, not a dictator. He only stepped in when necessary to protect the watershed. He taught me to do the same. The story broke the next day. HOA and county official accused of fraudulent land grab and water rights violation. Maria had done her homework, revealing that Commissioner Wilson had received substantial campaign donations from Victor Reeves, and that Gwen Harper stood to make millions as part owner of the proposed resort. The community reaction was swift and fierce. Longtime residents were outraged that their water security was being compromised for a luxury development. Even Whispering Pines homeowners were angry, learning that their HOA fees had been used to fund preliminary work on the resort without their knowledge. 3 days later, I was summoned to an emergency county commission meeting. The chamber was packed with concerned citizens, reporters, and very nervous-looking officials. Commissioner Wilson was conspicuously absent. The senior commissioner, Martha Jimenez, addressed me directly. Mr. Jenkins, in light of recent revelations, the Commission would like to formally acknowledge the validity of your family's water rights contract and apologize for any actions that may have violated that agreement. The district attorney stood next. I want to update the public that we are investigating allegations of document forgery, abuse of power, and potential fraud regarding county boundaries and water rights. Commissioner Wilson has been placed on administrative leave pending this investigation. When I left the meeting, Gwen Harper was waiting in the parking lot. Gone was the power suit, replaced by casual clothes that seemed to shrink her presence. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what was at stake? That resort would have put this backward county on the map. At the expense of its water security during a drought? That's not progress, Mrs. Harper, that's exploitation. You think you're some kind of hero with your precious lake and your water rights?" She stepped closer. "This isn't over. There are other ways to get what we want." "Actually, it is over," said a voice behind us. Sheriff Tanner approached with a deputy. "Mrs. Harper, I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted grand theft, and trespassing." As they led her away, I felt no satisfaction, only relief that my grandfather's legacy remained intact. In the following weeks, the full scheme unraveled. Victor Reeves had identified my lake as the perfect centerpiece for his resort but discovered the water rights issue. Rather than negotiate, he'd partnered with Gwen and Wilson to simply take what they wanted through fraudulent means. The investigation revealed similar tactics in other counties where Reeves had developed properties, manipulating local officials, falsifying documents, and strong-arming small property owners. This time, they'd picked the wrong target. Commissioner Wilson resigned and was charged with multiple felonies. Gwen Harper faced similar charges, plus additional counts of using HOA funds for personal gain. The Whispering Pines homeowners voted in an entirely new board. 6 months later, I stood on my dock watching the sunset reflect on the calm water. The drought had worsened, but thanks to the conservation measures my grandfather had built into the water rights agreement, the county was managing better than most. My phone rang. It was Eleanor. "Good news, Jason. The court has not only reaffirmed your water rights but strengthened the conservation provisions. The judge was impressed with how your family has managed the resource for generations. What about the new water commission they wanted to form? You'll have a permanent seat representing private water rights holders, but it's a collaborative approach, exactly what your grandfather would have wanted." After hanging up, I sat watching an osprey dive into the lake and emerge with a fish. My grandfather used to say that water wasn't something you owned so much as something you protected for future generations. As the new housing development down the road, a modest, water-conscious community that had replaced Reeves' extravagant resort plans, neared completion, I realized that my grandfather's foresight had protected not just our lake, but the entire county's water future. Sometimes the most valuable inheritances aren't things you can see from the surface. The following spring, when the drought finally broke with gentle, soaking rains, I invited the new county commissioners for a picnic by the lake. As they admired the clear water and healthy shoreline, Commissioner Jimenez raised her glass and a toast. "To the Jenkins family, stewards of our most precious resource for nearly a century." I thought about Gwen Harper, now serving her sentence, and how she had viewed my lake as nothing more than a pretty backdrop for vacation homes. She never understood that water isn't just a resource to exploit, it's the lifeblood of a community. That evening, as I paddled my canoe across the still waters, I scattered some of my grandfather's ashes that I'd saved for this moment. "We protected it, Grandpa," I whispered. "Just like you taught me." In the distance, I could see the lights of town reflected on the water's surface, a community that would now grow responsibly, with respect for the natural resources that sustained it. The ripples from my canoe spread outward in ever-widening circles, just like the effects of one family's commitment to doing what was right.